Espresso. This is a foundation of nearly every coffee drink on this list, made by forcing hot water through finely ground coffee under high pressure. The result is a small, concentrated shot topped with a layer of golden foam called crema. It originated in Italy in the early 20th century, when cafe owners wanted a faster way to serve coffee to customers on their way to work. The pressure extraction process pulls out oils and flavors that drip methods simply cannot reach, giving espresso its thick body and intense taste. Every other drink on this list either starts with espresso or borrows its brewing philosophy in some way. Ristretto. Made using the same espresso machine and the same amount of coffee grounds, a ristretto uses less water, which shortens extraction time. The result is a smaller, denser shot with a sweeter and less bitter profile than a standard espresso. Baristas sometimes describe it as espresso's more concentrated cousin, since the flavor feels tighter and more syrupy on the tongue. It's popular among drinkers who want the full punch of espresso without the sharper edges that come from a longer pull. In many Italian cafes, asking for a ristretto is simply a matter of personal taste rather than a specialty order. Lungo. If ristretto is espresso pulled short, lungo is the opposite, using more water passed through the same amount of ground coffee. This extends extraction time and produces a larger, milder shot with a different flavor balance, often bringing out more bitterness and less of the syrupy sweetness found in shorter pulls. The name comes from the Italian word for long, referring to the extended pour time rather than the size of the cup. Some drinkers prefer lungo because it feels closer to a regular cup of coffee while still carrying espresso's characteristic depth. It's a good middle ground for someone easing into stronger coffee styles. Americano. This drink was born from a simple need: diluting espresso with hot water to resemble the strength of drip coffee. The story often told is that American soldiers in Europe during World War II found straight espresso too intense and asked cafes to stretch it out with water, which is where the name comes from. Unlike drip coffee, an Americano keeps the layered flavor and slight cream of espresso just spread across a larger volume. It's a favorite for people who enjoy the taste of espresso but want a bigger, less concentrated cup to sip slowly. The ratio of water to espresso can vary widely depending on personal preference or regional habit. Long black. Often confused with the Americano, the long black flips the pouring order, with espresso poured over hot water instead of water poured into espresso. This small change reserves more of the crema on top, giving the drink a richer texture and a slightly stronger presentation. It's especially popular in Australia and New Zealand, where coffee culture places heavy emphasis on espresso quality. Because the crema survives the pour, many drinkers feel the long black tastes closer to a true espresso experience, just with more volume. The distinction is subtle but matters a great deal to baristas who take pride in presentation. Cappuccino. This is one of the most recognized coffee drinks in the world, built from equal parts espresso, steamed milk, and milk foam. The name comes from the brown robes worn by Capuchin friars, whose color reportedly resembled the drink's rich, milky brown tone. A proper cappuccino has a thick cap of foam, which is where much of its identity comes from, since the texture contrast between silky milk and airy foam is part of the experience. In Italy, cappuccino is traditionally consumed only in the morning, considered too heavy for after meals. Outside Italy, that rule has mostly disappeared, and it's enjoyed at any hour. Flat white. Originating in Australia and New Zealand during the 1980s, the flat white was created as an alternative to cappuccino, with less foam and a smoother, more velvety milk texture. It uses a higher ratio of espresso to milk compared to a latte, giving it a stronger coffee presence despite its creamy feel. Baristas often use microfoam, milk steam to have very fine, almost invisible bubbles, to achieve a glossy surface that defines a drink. The flat white gained global popularity in the 2000s as specialty coffee shops began emphasizing texture and balance over sheer size. It sits in an interesting space between an espresso-forward drink and a comforting milky one. Latte, short for a café latte, meaning coffee and milk in Italian. This drink combines espresso with a large amount of steamed milk and just a thin layer of foam on top. It's milder and creamier than a cappuccino because the milk-to-espresso ratio is much higher. Lattes became a canvas for latte art, the practice of pouring steamed milk in patterns like hearts, rosettes, or swans, since the smooth surface holds detailed designs well. This drink is often the entry point for people new to espresso-based coffee, since the strong bitterness of the shot is softened significantly by the milk. Flavor versions like vanilla or caramel lattes have become common additions to cafe menus worldwide. Macchiato. The word macchiato means stained or spotted in Italian, referring to the small dollop of foam milk placed on top of a shot of espresso. Unlike a latte or cappuccino, this drink uses only a touch of milk, keeping the espresso flavor dominant while softening its sharp edge slightly. Traditional Italian macchiatos are quite small, served in an espresso cup rather than a larger mug. Over time, some coffee chains created their own version, layering milk, espresso, and caramel in a taller glass, which differs significantly from the original concept. The classic macchiato remains a favorite for those who want a milk touch without losing the intensity of straight espresso. Cortado. This drink comes from Spain and is built around a specific idea, cutting the acidity of espresso with a small, equal amount of steamed milk. The word cortado literally means cut, describing how the milk tones down the sharper qualities of the coffee without overwhelming it. It's smaller than a latte or cappuccino and contains very little foam, focusing instead on a smooth, balanced texture. Cortados have grown popular in specialty coffee shops outside Spain, especially among drinkers who find lattes too milky, but straight espresso too intense. The result is a compact, well-rounded drink that highlights the coffee's flavor while softening its edges. Café au lait. A French classic, Café au lait pairs brewed coffee, rather than espresso, with steamed or scalded milk in roughly equal parts. This sets it apart from many other milk-based drinks on this list, since it doesn't rely on an espresso machine at all. Traditionally served in a wide, handleless bowl in France, it's meant to be sipped slowly, often alongside pastries in the morning. The flavor is softer and less concentrated than espresso drinks, since drip or French press coffee doesn't have the same intensity. It reflects a more relaxed approach to coffee culture, centered on comfort rather than strength. Mocha. Combining espresso, steamed milk, and chocolate, the mocha bridges a line between coffee and dessert. Its name traces back to the port city of Mocha in Yemen, historically a major hub for coffee trade, though the chocolate addition is a later invention rather than a historical practice from that region. Chocolate syrup or cocoa powder is typically mixed into the espresso before milk is added, and the drink is often topped with whipped cream for extra richness. Mochas tend to appeal to people who enjoy coffee but want a sweeter, more indulgent version. Variations exist using white chocolate or dark chocolate, each shifting the flavor balance in a different direction. Affogato. Part dessert and part coffee drink. Affogato involves pouring a hot shot of espresso directly over a scoop of vanilla ice cream or gelato. The name means drown in Italian, describing exactly what happens to the ice cream as the hot espresso melts it slightly on contact. This creates a striking contrast between hot and cold, bitter and sweet, all in a single small dish. It's often served at the end of a meal rather than alongside one, functioning more as a dessert course than a standard coffee order. Its simplicity is part of its appeal, since it requires only 2 ingredients, but delivers a memorable combination. Irish coffee. This drink blends hot coffee, Irish whiskey, sugar, and a float of lightly whipped cream on top, creating a warming combination that's part beverage and part cocktail. It was reportedly created at Foynes Air Base in Ireland during the 1940s, meant to comfort cold and tired transatlantic travelers. The cream is poured over the back of a spoon so it sits on the surface rather than mixing in, allowing drinkers to taste the hot, boozy coffee first and the cool cream after. Irish coffee became especially popular in the United States after being featured at a San Francisco bar in the 1950s. It remains a go-to choice for cold evenings or celebratory gatherings rather than everyday drinking. Turkish coffee. Prepared using extremely finely ground coffee simmered slowly in a small pot called a sez. Turkish coffee is unfiltered, meaning the grounds settle at the bottom of the cup rather than being strained out. This method produces a thick, strong brew with a distinct texture unlike drip or espresso coffee. The preparation is often ceremonial, involving careful attention to foam formation on top, which is considered a sign of quality. Turkish coffee holds deep cultural significance across the Middle East and Balkans, often served during social visits or used in fortune-telling traditions involving the leftover grounds. UNESCO even recognized Turkish coffee culture as part of humanity's intangible cultural heritage, highlighting its importance beyond just the drink itself. Vietnamese iced coffee, known locally as Freddo. This drink combines strong, dark roast coffee brewed through a small metal drip filter, called a fin with sweetened condensed milk, then poured over ice. The condensed milk became a practical substitute historically, since fresh dairy was hard to preserve in Vietnam's climate before refrigeration was widespread. The slow drip process, often taking several minutes, produces a bold, concentrated coffee that stands up well against the sweetness of condensed milk. Once combined and stirred over ice, the drink has a rich, dessert-like quality balanced by underlying bitterness. It has become widely popular internationally as more people discover Vietnam's distinct coffee traditions. Cold brew. Unlike iced coffee made by simply chilling hot brewed coffee, cold brew is made by steeping coarsely ground coffee in cold or room temperature water for an extended period, often 12 to 24 hours. This slow extraction process produces a smoother, less acidic flavor since fewer bitter compounds are pulled out compared to hot brewing methods. The result is typically served over ice and can be diluted with water or milk depending on preference. Cold brew's popularity surged in the 2010s as coffee shops look for ways to offer refreshing options during warmer months. Because it's brewed without heat, cold brew concentrate can also be stored for several days without losing much quality. Nitro cold brew. Taking cold brew a step further, nitro cold brew is infused with nitrogen gas and dispensed from a pressurized tap, similar to how certain beers are served. This process creates extremely fine bubbles that give the coffee a creamy, cascading texture and a thick, frothy head, even without any added milk or cream. Visually, it resembles a stout beer more than a typical coffee drink, which often surprises first-time drinkers. The nitrogen also softens perceived bitterness, making the coffee taste smoother and slightly sweeter on its own. Nitro cold brew requires specialized equipment, which is why it's typically found in dedicated coffee shops rather than made at home. Iced coffee. The most straightforward cold coffee option. Iced coffee is simply coffee that has been brewed hot using standard methods and then cooled and poured over ice. Because it starts as hot brewed coffee, it tends to have a different flavor profile than cold brew, often slightly more acidic and less smooth. Some cafes brew it hot and chill it quickly to avoid dilution, while others brew it double strength, so melting ice doesn't water down the flavor too much. It remains one of the simplest ways to enjoy coffee during warm weather without needing special brewing equipment. Milk, sugar, or flavored syrups can be added just as easily as they would be to a hot cup. Frappé. Originating in Greece in 1957, almost by accident, the frappé was created when an employee at a trade fair mixed instant coffee with cold water and ice in a shaker because no hot water was available. The result was a frothy, cold coffee drink that quickly became a staple of Greek cafe culture. It's typically made by shaking or blending instant coffee, sugar, and water until foamy, then pouring over ice, sometimes with milk added afterward. The thick foam on top is considered essential to a proper frappé, and getting the right froth is something of a small art form. Despite starting as an improvisation, it remains one of Greece's most iconic warm-weather drinks. Frappuccino. Though the name sounds similar to frappé, this is a trademarked, blended drink developed by a coffee chain in the 1990s, combining coffee or coffee base with ice, milk, and flavored syrups blended until smooth and slushy. Unlike a frappé, which relies on shaking to create foam, a frappuccino is made using a blender, giving a thicker, more milkshake-like consistency. It's often topped with whipped cream and drizzle, leaning more into dessert territory than traditional coffee drinks. Frappuccinos come in countless flavor variations, some of which contain little to no actual coffee at all. Their popularity helped popularize the idea of coffee as an indulgent, customizable treat rather than a simple morning beverage. Café Cubano. This Cuban specialty is made by brewing strong espresso with sugar added directly during the brewing process, rather than stirred in afterward. As the first few drops of espresso emerge, they're whipped together with sugar to create a light, foamy paste called espuma, which is then combined with the rest of the shot. This technique produces a naturally sweetened, intensely flavored coffee with a distinctive foam layer on top. Café Cubano is traditionally shared among friends or family, often poured into several small cups from one shared preparation. It reflects a broader Cuban coffee culture, where taking time for coffee is treated as a social ritual rather than a quick errand. Café de Olla, a traditional Mexican coffee. Café de Olla is brewed in a clay pot, which is where its name comes from, combined with cinnamon and unrefined cane sugar called piloncillo. The clay pot is believed by many to add a subtle earthiness to the flavor that metal or glass brewing vessels can't replicate. This method dates back generations and is often associated with rural and family traditions, sometimes prepared over an open flame rather than a stovetop. The cinnamon and raw sugar give the coffee a warm, slightly spiced sweetness that's distinct from most other coffee styles on this list. It's commonly served during colder months or family gatherings, carrying strong cultural and nostalgic significance. Espresso con Panna. This simple Italian drink pairs a shot of espresso with a dollop of whipped cream on top, rather than milk. The name translates directly to espresso with cream, and it functions almost like a smaller, simpler cousin to Vienna-style coffees. The cold, slightly sweet cream contrasts with the hot, bitter espresso underneath, creating a pleasant balance without needing sugar. It's a quick option for someone who wants a touch of indulgence without the volume of a full milk-based drink. Unlike a macchiato, the cream here isn't stirred in immediately, so the first sip often carries a noticeably different taste than the last. Viennese coffee. Vienna has a long, formal coffeehouse tradition, and its namesake coffee typically involves strong brewed coffee topped generously with whipped cream, sometimes finished with chocolate shavings or cinnamon. Historically, Viennese cafes were social and intellectual hubs, frequented by writers and thinkers who would spend hours over a single cup. The drink itself reflects that unhurried atmosphere, meant to be sipped slowly rather than consumed quickly. Variations exist across different cafes, with some adding liqueur or altering the cream sweetness, but the core idea of rich coffee under a cloud of cream remains constant. Vienna's coffeehouse culture was even recognized by UNESCO as an important part of the city's intangible heritage. Breve, an American variation on the latte, a Breve replaces steamed milk with steamed half and half, a mixture of milk and cream. This substitution creates a noticeably richer, heavier drink with a fuller mouthfeel than a standard latte. Because half and half has a higher fat content, it also frosts differently, producing a denser, creamier foam on top. Breves tend to appeal to people who want the comforting texture of a latte, but with extra indulgence added in. It's less common on standard menus, but often available as a customization request at specialty coffee shops. Red Eye. Sometimes called a shot in the dark, a red eye is simply drip coffee with a shot of espresso added into it, combining two brewing methods into one strong cup. The name plays on the idea of staying awake through a red-eye flight or an overnight shift, since the caffeine content is notably higher than either component alone. There's no complicated technique involved, just a straightforward addition meant to boost strength and alertness. Variations exist with 2 shots of espresso, sometimes called a black eye, for an even more intense version. It's a practical drink built for function first, favored by those who need a serious caffeine boost without extra flavoring or milk. Café Bombón, originating in Spain, particularly the Valencia region. Café Bombón is made by pouring a shot of espresso over a layer of sweetened condensed milk in a clear glass. Unlike drinks where the milk is stirred in immediately, the condensed milk initially sits at the bottom, creating a visually striking layered effect before mixing. As the two components blend, the drink becomes sweet and creamy, with the espresso's bitterness balanced by the thick, sugary milk underneath. It's typically served in a small glass rather than a mug, emphasizing the layered presentation as part of the experience. This drink shares similarities with Vietnamese iced coffee, though it's traditionally served warm rather than over ice. Café Touba, a specialty from Senegal. Café Touba is brewed from coffee beans roasted and ground together with grains of salim, a spice sometimes called African pepper, giving the coffee a distinct peppery, slightly smoky flavor. The drink is named after the holy city of Touba and carries strong religious and cultural significance within Senegal's Murid Muslim community. Vendors selling Café Touba are a common sight on streets throughout Senegal, often preparing it fresh for customers on the spot. The spice blend used varies from vendor to vendor, meaning the flavor can shift noticeably depending on where it's purchased. Sweetened generously with sugar, it's typically served strong and hot, regardless of the weather outside. Kopi Tubruk. This traditional Indonesian coffee is prepared by boiling coarsely ground coffee directly with sugar and water, without any filtering process, similar in spirit to Turkish coffee, but with its own distinct character. The grounds settle at the bottom of the cup as the coffee is left to steep briefly before drinking, and the top portion is sipped carefully to avoid the sediment below. It's typically strong and intensely sweet, reflecting broader trends in Indonesian coffee preparation, where sugar is added generously during brewing. Kopi Tubruk is often enjoyed in casual settings, from street stalls to home kitchens, rather than formal cafes. Its simplicity and boldness have kept a staple of everyday Indonesian coffee culture for generations. Espresso Romano. This variation involves serving a shot of espresso alongside a small slice of lemon, sometimes with the lemon rubbed along the rim of the cup or dropped directly into the coffee. Its exact origins are debated, and some Italian coffee purists argue the combination isn't authentically Italian at all, despite its name suggesting otherwise. The citrus is believed by some to cut through the bitterness of the espresso, adding a bright, slightly tangy contrast. Others find the combination unusual, since lemon can react with coffee's acidity in ways that some palates enjoy and others don't. Regardless of its disputed authenticity, it remains a distinctive option for drinkers curious about unconventional espresso pairings. Doppio, simply meaning double in Italian. A doppio is a double shot of espresso, using twice the coffee grounds and yielding roughly twice the liquid of a standard single shot. It's not a separate recipe so much as a portion size, but it changes how the drink is experienced, offering a fuller, longer-lasting espresso moment rather than a quick sip. Many espresso-based drinks, like lattes and cappuccinos, are made using a doppio as their base rather than a single shot, especially in larger cup sizes. It became a standard order for those who find a single shot too brief or too weak for their taste. The crema on a well-pulled doppio tends to be thicker, simply because there's more coffee involved in the extraction. Bulletproof Coffee. A more recent addition to coffee culture, Bulletproof Coffee blends hot brewed coffee with butter, typically from grass-fed cows, and a type of oil derived from coconut called MCT oil. The mixture is blended rather than stirred, creating a frothy, creamy texture similar to a latte despite containing no dairy milk at all. It was popularized in the 2010s by wellness and biohacking communities, who promoted it as a way to sustain energy and focus without a mid-morning crash. The high-fat content makes it noticeably more filling than standard coffee, with some drinkers using it as a partial meal replacement. Its polarizing nature means it's embraced enthusiastically by some and dismissed by others as an unnecessary trend. Café Frappé Freddo. Distinct from the classic Greek frappé, Freddo espresso and Freddo cappuccino are cold coffee drinks made using actual espresso shots rather than instant coffee, shaken or blended with ice until cold and foamy. Freddo espresso is simply chilled, foamy espresso served over ice, while Freddo cappuccino add a layer of cold milk foam on top. These drinks became especially popular in Greece and Cyprus as an evolution of the original frappé, catering to drinkers who preferred real espresso over instant coffee. The technique involves shaking the espresso with ice immediately after brewing to lock in both temperature and texture. It reflects how traditional coffee customs can evolve over time while still keeping their cultural roots intact. Eiskaffee. A German coffee tradition, Eiskaffee combines cold coffee with vanilla ice cream and is often topped with whipped cream, making it closer to a dessert than a simple drink. It's typically served in a tall glass with a long spoon, meant to be eaten as much as drunk, blending melting ice cream into the coffee as it's consumed. This drink reflects a broader European approach where coffee and dessert frequently overlap, rather than staying in separate categories. Cafes across Germany and Austria often feature their own version, with slight variations in sweetness or the type of coffee used as a base. It's especially popular during summer, offering a cooling treat that still carries a noticeable coffee flavor throughout. Instant coffee. Though often looked down upon by coffee enthusiasts, instant coffee is made from brewed coffee that has been dehydrated into soluble granules or powder, allowing it to dissolve directly in hot water without any brewing equipment. It was developed in the early 20th century and gained massive popularity due to its convenience, particularly during wartime when soldiers needed a quick and portable caffeine source. While the flavor is generally considered less complex than freshly brewed coffee, advances in processing have improved quality significantly compared to earlier decades. Instant coffee remains extremely popular worldwide, particularly in regions where quick preparation matters more than nuanced flavor. It also serves as a base for drinks like the Greek Frappé, proving it still has a distinct role even within specialty coffee culture.